Welcome to the wonderful world of Zentangle. The Zentangle method is much more than drawing patterns and pretty pictures. It can calm the mind using your creativity. At Zentangle.com, Maria Thomas bought the Tangling and Rick Roberts bought the Zen, and together they composed a method to make drawing easy, mindful and fun. And then they passed it on to others to spread the word. So whether your interest here today is for wanting to increase some self-confidence in your own drawing ability, even if you think you don't have any, or maybe you're looking for a relaxing tool to calm yourself in a creative way to be more mindful. Perhaps you're exploring the technique to see if you can apply it to your own existing art practice. Or perhaps you want to use it for practical applications such as making personalized gifts and cards, or simply because it just looks like a lot of fun to do. So let me illustrate here with a couple of simple tangles. If you want to follow along, you don't need a lot of tools or art pens. You can simply follow along using a pencil, a blending tool, like either a tortillon or a paper stump, but if all you have to hand is a wee cotton bud, or even your finger, that's fine too. I'm going to use a little pen. I'm using a Sakura Micron Pigma, but if you just have a fine line felt pen, that will work too. And we'll just need a small tile. This one is about 5 centimeters square to work with today. So 3 simple tools and an easy part of the Zentangle method. Just appreciate the simplicity of the little tools that we're going to use. Then we're going to start on this with just a couple of wee tangles to show you how it works. So the first thing you go is, oh, big scary square, blank square, what am I going to do? So we stop that problem by just popping on 4 little corner dots. Because the tile is so small, it's really easy to rotate, and it's really important to make life easy for yourself when you're drawing tangles. So after we've done a little bit of appreciation of the materials, and we popped in our corner dots, we're simply going to do a border. So I'm just going to join these corner dots with a little line. You might have them straight, you might have a bit of a wiggle on. Doesn't really matter which way, it'll both work perfectly. The next stage of the Zentangle method is to pop in a string. Because I'm just going to do a couple of tangles, I'm just going to split this tile really simply into 2 triangles here. I'm not very good at straight lines, so mine always have a wiggle on. But if you've got a beautiful straight line, that's fine too. So after we've done our appreciation, our corner dots, our border and a string, we now get to tangle. So I'll pop down my pencil and pick up my beautiful pen. And the first tangle I want to do is one called Crescent Moon. It's a really simple elemental strokes that work with Zentangle. We're going to use 5 very simple strokes. We're going to use a dot, we're going to use a line, we're going to use a single curve, we're going to use a double curve, and we're going to use an orb. So if you can draw those 4 letters, I, C, S, and O, you can do Zentangle. So if I switch back here, I'm now going to draw the letter C. So I'm going to use this section edge, this line here, to illustrate where I need to go. So I don't need to think about where I'm going, I'm just going to follow a little routine. So I'm going to draw a C on my section edge, and then I'm going to use a straight line to seal it off. I'm going to do the same thing again. And then I'm going to rotate the tile. This is why it helps when it's really small and simple, so that I can do the same repetitive stroke again. And it doesn't matter if your crescents are a little flat, it doesn't matter if they're bulbous, it will still work. Sometimes I find when I've got a little bit of a junction here, I can't fit a whole C in, so I'll just pop in a little angle there. Rotate round again, I can still do that same repetitive stroke as I go round, till I've filled my section edge with a little bit of gap in between those C's. Then when I'm back at the start again, I'm going to do a little bit of fill. So I'll just take my pen. Some people choose to start at one end of a shape and fill across the way. Other people choose to do it slightly differently, in that they might choose to just go around this same outside edge again, maybe a few times with their pen. When you've got a wider border, then fill in. I don't know, whichever way works for you. You can of course draw a wee orb in the middle if you like, almost like a ladybird with his spots. Pop in a spot inside your crescent. Each time when I've filled one section, I just move on to the next one and do the same repetitive stroke. Each of the tangles that you can look up online are broken down into these little steps, so it's really easy to repeat them again over and over. And doing that same repetitive stroke means with each of these patterns you don't need to think about where you're going, because you're just going to follow a little process and takes out that decision making, which means you can really get into the flow of your tangling. A tiny little one here. And you'll see each time I'm rotating the towel around, that means I get to leave my drawing hand in the same spot and rotate round. If you're left-handed, you may find you want to rotate round the other way to me. Just like some way some people draw upside down when they're drawing. Doesn't matter with Zentangle, you can rotate the tile to make it comfortable for your drawing hand. So whether you've popped in a little smile or a dot, or you've got stripes, goodness knows, you might have done something different to me if you're tangling along at the same time, until we've got back round to where we started and I've filled all my crescents. The next step of this tangle is called doing an aura. And this just means taking a line around the outside edge of our crescents. And I know where this line's going to go because I'm just going to follow the curve that already exists. So I don't need to think about where it's going, I'm just going to follow that beautiful black crescent curve. And I'm going to rotate the tile around and do that same repetitive stroke to each of these little elements, each of these little crescents. Rotating the tile as I go, doing the same repetitive stroke. Once I've got round to the start, I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to take this little element line. This time, because I'm quite close, I can actually bounce the line off. Here, I can't really quite squeeze in, so I won't try. I'll just change the direction and bounce off round to the next crescent. Sometimes you can get all the way in, sometimes you can't. And you'll note I'm constantly rotating the tile round to make it easy for my drawing hand. You can, if you like, have little breaks or caused adding a little bit of sparkle to your line. So if you find it difficult to keep a continuous line or not quite get back into exactly the same spot when you rotate the tile around, well, don't. Just leave a little break in the line and then carry on. And you've added a little bit of sparkle to the tile. To the line. Sometimes you'll find this ends in a concentric shapes as they go down, other times you might end in a spiral. And if I've got a little gap here in the section that I still haven't filled, I'll just throw in a few more aura lines to fill up that section edge. Might even get a little triangle in there. And here the line didn't quite add up, but that's okay, I'll fill it in there. And that's our lovely little tangle crescent moon. And the other tangle I wanted to do, because it teaches the technique drawing behind, is a wee one called holly bough. And this involves the next section next door, and we're just going to take a line and draw it across the section. And this one was inspired by a carpenter looking at his wood offcut pile. So if you imagine that this line, instead of being a line, is going to be a plank of wood on this offcut pile, I'm just going to draw another line that is sort of parallel with the other one, and this is our first plank. Then I'll rotate the tile, choose another start point, but when I come up to the plank that I've already got, I'm just going to lift my pen over, take off and re-land the other side. I'm going to do the same with the other side of the plank, but when I come to this one I've already done, I'll hover over and put my pen back down. You've taken off and landed again, and you've drawn behind. So we're going to continue with the same fashion, just rotating the tile slightly each time, so you can leave your drawing hand in the same spot. But every time you come across a plank that you've already drawn, just lift your pen over and pop it back down the other side. And you can see as you begin to get a few more planks on here, you might have to do it more than once on a line, and we just keep going until you fill that section. Just think of that wood offcut pile, lots of random directions, and you know what? They don't even need to be parallel lines. And in fact, they don't even need to be straight. Maybe the odd piece of wood has warped in the sun and it's got a bit of a curve on. And you'll keep going in that fashion until you fill up your section size that you've got. Perfect. So these two ones are called Crescent Moon. Oh. All the tangles have names, so it's really easy to find their step outs. And Holly Bough. There's the names of these two tangles. So once we've got our tangling done, we're now going to turn this 2D object to make it look a little bit 3D with some shading techniques. So I've finished with my pen for now, and I'm going to go back to my pencil. So I will grab my pencil here. Now the reason why it's short is it just means that I can hold the pencil in the palm of my hand, and then I can keep it quite flat. So you can imagine if I was holding my pencil normally, it would be like this, but I'm going to hold it quite flat, so it just means I can see exactly where the point of the pencil is reaching to. Whichever way you choose to hold your pencil, keep a sharp point. And I'm just going to pop a little bit of graphite just in between all those crescents, just as they go along. I'll rotate the tile as I go so I can see exactly where that pencil is going. I'm just popping down a little bit of graphite between all of those crescents on the section edge. Lots of ways to shade, and we're going to shade around the section edge here and then on the inside of it. So I'm now going to use my blending tool, this wee tortillon. Some people choose to blend in little circles, blend round that way. Other people choose to sort of go in straight lines. Just find whichever works for you and whichever is easiest. And I'm just pulling that graphite into the section from the line where I drew it on. I'll rotate round as I go so I can really make sure the point of my tortillon's in the same place. If you're using your finger, just be a little bit careful you're not going too near the edge. If you're using a paper stump, this is more of a solid roll of paper, but definitely has a point which you can shade to. Again, if you're using a cotton bud here, you may need to use a little bit of pressure just to get the graphite onto the cotton and then use it to mush, lovely technical term there, the graphite into the space. You can also put a little bit of shading on places where the line changes direction here. So if you see that my aura line is changing direction at this point, I just put a little bit of graphite going down, following the changes of the direction, and then use the tortillon just to pull it out to one side. You can see here I create a little bit of a tunnel effect going on, just visually. I always liken shading to, it's when you put some furniture oil or varnish onto some wood, it really brings out the grain. And you can see here that we've just created a bit of a 3D effect with the graphite. And you can see the difference between unshaded and shaded now. So let's do the same to the other side with the holly bough. So what I'm going to do is look for this first plank. This is the one that hasn't got any of these wood planks over on top of it. And I'm just going to use my pencil, this time on the outside of the line. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of graphite just on the outside of that line. And then rotate the tile round and do the outside of the other side. And then just use my tortillon just to gently smush ever so slightly as I'm going along here. And you can see how what's happened. This top plank now is visually going over the ones below it. So you can do that same technique following the whole line to any of the other planks, or you can just pop a little bit of graphite just in the portion places where one plank is going over the other. And I'm just popping a little bit of graphite on the outside of the top plank as I go. Rotate the tile round, make it easy for yourself to pop that graphite in, and then again use my tortillon just to pull the graphite out from that space, just a little bit, almost using a shadow technique for our shading here. That's the great thing about Zentangle shading rules, you can choose to ignore things like reality and do whatever you like. This time though I'm just shading just with the shadow, just so you can see that visual effect of the shading making a difference to the over and under nature of the way this tangles come out. And if you like, you can also put a little bit of a graphite blend to that edge line around the outside edge there, just shading in between where my planks come. Sometimes you find you don't need to add any more graphite, you can just use what's already there and what's on your tortillon existing already. I'll quickly smush it in to give me a lovely little edge there, and you can see two different effects of shading with these two different tangles. Now of course tangles don't always look the same, so I'm really not expecting you to have done the same thing as me, but this drawing technique is suitable for novices and seasoned tanglers and artists because it's a method of building complex images from repetitive and simple patterns. So put very simply, it might look quite different to mine. So whether you choose to do your crescents very big or very bulbous, you can see 4 different ways to do your crescent moon, all just looking slightly differently as we've gone along. Or which way will I go? This way. You can see here that it just depends how it looks as to what effect that you have with the different tangles. And I'm just going to show a couple more in here. Where will I go? There. So you can see here on this mosaic of 9 little squares, I think we just fit onto my camera. We can see here we've gone very bulbous, we've gone very big, we've gone with lots of highlights in them. You can make them quite flat. You can see with the aura lines I've either been really busy, I've added a bit of sparkle, I've got here where they actually join up, it looks different again. With the shading I've put in a bit of a centre of black in the middle of that one. You can see how different they look, even though you'll all be following the same step out. So maybe one of yours looks a little bit like one of mine, or maybe it doesn't. With Crescent, with holly bough here, you can be quite organised with your planks if you want to. You can even not make the lines parallel, and so there's a little hourglass shape here. You could maybe have the sticks, more like sticks than planks. You could even have horns. You can see how creative you can be with this particular tangle. So you see, it doesn't matter how you draw a particular pattern or tangle, it can come out quite different each time and none of them are wrong. And you can see how this is quite a forgiving and very simple way of building up these patterns. So if you've been keen to explore a little bit further, I have some in-person classes in Christchurch, and I have pre-recorded videos on my website or on the Thinkific platform. So happy tangling. I hope you had fun.